Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody. Eli's dad here with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. Today, our focus is going to be on leadership, but peripherally, the concept may be applied to success seekers at all levels. I will speak today of taking the wrong shortcuts to achieve an objective. Further, our pursuance of the time-saving shortcut can serve to skew the mindset and thus the achievement of reaching a worthy objective. Please follow along as I once again dad preach to Eli. We begin with 1984. No, not the year, the book. For those of you unfamiliar with George Orwell's book, published in 1949, its premise is what life will be like 35 years in the future in 1984. Perhaps its most noted concept is that in the future, everything we do will be under the watchful eye of a camera, and somewhere, somebody will be watching you. So, what does this have to do with leadership? Unfortunately, quite a bit. You know, Eli, when I had offices in Indianapolis and Detroit to run, I'd like to split my time between the two so I could keep my fingers on the pulse of each operation. You do remember the sign in my office, expect to inspect and inspect to expect, in our leadership lessons, don't you? Now, at that time, plane tickets were $19 between the two cities if you purchased your tickets 3 weeks ahead. Let's see. Do I want to drive for 5.5 hours each way or take a 20-minute flight? Well, duh. It actually costs less to fly than it was to drive. A no-brainer. Of course, you'll recall from our lessons on leadership that you are always training leaders, because without leader development, there could be no expansion to your business. My point is that sometimes I would fly to Detroit from Indy, and other times I would send one of my leaders in training. At that time, they didn't check your fingerprints before you boarded the plane. I could buy tickets in my name, and then I could send somebody else. We were not yet plagued by the curse of terrorism. Similarly, today, it's a good idea for each workplace to have an escape plan in the event some nut with a gun shows up at the workplace. We live in different times today, safety-wise. That's just the way it is. Additionally, most sizable workplaces have now installed cameras in virtually every nook and cranny for safety as well. But that makes sense today. Now here's where 1984 comes into play. What many organizations are now doing is that they're using their cameras as the major tool in the workplace. They have adopted the mindset of security guard leadership. What does security guard leadership mean? Well, picture the security guard sitting at their station. What are they doing? They're looking at all the different screens to see if something suspicious or wrong is going down in a particular location. That's the job of the security guard, to keep a constant vigil and to spot trouble as it happens, or to anticipate a problematic scenario. Hooray for technology, a very useful tool in this scenario. Now, fast forward to the term destructive abundance. Management/leadership has now, in many instances, adopted the technology to monitor the employees. The problem is that the only time that workers talk to the leaders now is when the leaders perceive that you've done something wrong. The leaders are looking to catch people doing something wrong. Big Brother, as George Orwell refers to it in his book, is always watching. So what's wrong with that? I don't want to get heavy, but there's a ton wrong with that. First, it creates an employee mindset where the first concern is what is seen on screen, because there's always somebody looking over your shoulder. How do people respond to constant corporate scrutiny? There are many variations. Here are some of them. First, The focus becomes to not do something wrong instead of doing something right. The second is timidity, because the only feedback you receive is negative. As an example, we saw what you were doing on screen, and here's what you did wrong. Third, it creates a culture of CYB, cover your butt, in the workplace. I'm just going to do the bare minimum and not do anything extra because it might be wrong. I don't want to be scolded. Fourth, it virtually eliminates any creative ideas from the rank and file worker because their focus is just getting by and not, how can we improve this thing? This security guard mentality stunts the growth of a company worse than radioactivity. There's more. Trust is a two-way street. The message from leadership is, we don't trust you, and we are watching. There's a major difference between inspecting results and intrusive snooping. Nobody likes to be spied upon. One of the key ingredients for a company to grow is feedback. Once again, it's the breakfast of champions. Security guard management only offers negative feedback because that is what Big Brother is looking to find. Positive feedback should be dispersed to the employee pool in the approximate ratio of at least 6-to-1. When one receives positive feedback, it serves as a tonic that energizes and encourages the receiver to continue along the same path and perhaps seek more compliments with an innovative suggestion or action. The effect of compliments lasts considerably longer than a 5-minute energy drink, and without the caffeine. Further, when people feel their work is appreciated and not taken for granted, the culture of the workplace becomes more team-oriented and less finger-pointing oriented. Getting business results becomes a source of satisfaction and not an effort of continuous tedium. Further still, Big Brother creates the mindset of employee scorekeeping. For example, I did this and Joey only did that. Why should I do more? My pay remains the same. I receive no recognition or gratitude. I'm going to do the least amount possible because my motivation is to not do something wrong. Eli, in growing organizations, there can frequently be mistakes made in an effort to advance the big cause. Good leadership accepts these circumstances as part of doing business. It corrects the misstep, yet it encourages the effort and mindset because only through trial and error are major advances made. Big Brother is a status quo seeker used by lazy management that doesn't go into the field and fails to encourage, compliment, and inspire the workforce. Remember the mantra, share the vision and sell the dream. There is no one sharing the vision and no one selling the dream. Why? Because it's easier to watch the screen, catch people doing something wrong, and feel that you've done your job because you have spotted something. Further, as Big Brother, it's your job to find something wrong, so even the slightest error, once discovered, is a perceived feather in the cap of the observer. The plague of destructive technological abundance has turned those that practice security guard leadership into becoming stationary reservoirs instead of a river that flows. That is, staying in one place instead of examining and getting the feel of the countryside, flowing with the workplace. Cameras can't replace being in the workplace. The purpose of walking around is catching people doing something right. The purpose of watching on camera is catching people doing things wrong. Now, you wouldn't spend your married hours watching your spouse on video. Being there in person allows you to send and receive messages, to give and receive feedback, to make the workforce feel that we are all part of the same united team. It's like being the conductor of an orchestra. You don't just hand out the sheet music and say, play. You have to become part of the music. Now, leaders, when you catch people doing things right, you will be amazed of the snowball effect. The employee mindset becomes, they care because they noticed I put in a sizable effort to get that job to turn out right. My contribution and work product are appreciated. I had a good day at work today. To leaders that manage via the camera in the workplace, here are some thoughts from the people being watched. Number one, if you have 10,000 regulations, you destroy all respect for the law. Number two, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Number three, have you ever said to yourself, quote, I've had it, unquote? Because you're working on a job where they didn't like you and you didn't like them. It's where they pay you just enough to keep you from quitting and you work just hard enough to keep from getting fired. It's a contract of mediocrity. Number four, we, the uninformed, working for the inaccessible, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. Now, these are not particularly good mindsets for an entity that seeks growth or, even worse, survival. The paradigm that is being embraced is not a healthy one. Leaders must remember that their function is to serve and not to be served. To continuously ask the question, why are we in business? To change to a paradigm that seeks to uncover solutions, to develop an entity that provides growth for its patrons and its personnel, and to create a climate of fulfillment. Now, what we have discussed today is one example of negative technological abundance. My point is that there are many other examples that become ubiquitous in the course of everyday life. For instance, isn't it a page out of the book 1984 that people spend more time communicating on their devices than they do with other people? Are the machines taking over? I'd like to answer that question for you, but I've got to go right now. But I'll be back. Next time that we reassemble, we will begin a 3-part series about time. To make sure that you have the time to experience that lesson, please make sure that you have clicked the subscribe icon and the bell icon. Please remember that Big Brother is a close personal friend and he's watching you, so make sure you're subscribed. Our thought for the day, oh, one more thing. Please remember that Eli appreciates your comments and your questions. I told him that if you hit the like icon, I'll take him out for a pizza. His favorite topping is pepperoni, so don't be an anchovy. Our thought for the day is, they always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. That's from Andy Warhol. And because we never end a meeting on a philosophical note, get out there and charge. I'm Eli's dad.